Hi guys, Lethal Port here. For a while now, I've been a fan of the true crime horror and creepy pasta community, listening to folks such as Mortis Media and Let's Read, among others. And I have submitted my own stories to a few of these people and they have been narrated. But as my channel has gone on, while I'm still going to continue with gaming, there are other things that I'm interested in and would like to possibly have a go at. Some of these things will probably happen way in the future when things are more worked out, but I thought maybe at the moment I'd give it a go at narration. And what's better than starting with my own stories? Well, as most of you know, I'm from Australia, rural New South Wales to be exact, and I'm a huge fan and have huge interest in the supernatural and paranormal, and I'm always intrigued by learning stories from family, friends, randoms. Um, Even made a doco in one of my TAFE classes to do with interviewing family, friends, and acquaintances about their experiences with the paranormal. I need to find it, but I will possibly try to see if I can upload it and maybe some of the other stuff that I've done in my previous TAFE classes. But anyway, let me get started. I've always been interested in the paranormal and supernatural, as I just said. It's most likely from hearing the many tales from family members as a young girl, sitting under the kitchen table, listening to the adults talk about strange goings-on of the past and the present. I have heard many experiences and had a few myself. The stories were mainly told by my great-great-grandmother, Nana Kate, on my mother's side, as well as by other family members. The stories were usually of strange things happening on their property in northern rural New South Wales, which my grandmother lived as a young woman while raising her family. There are 5 experiences that I can recall from when they lived on this property. One that my grandmother told me the most often was of the time when she was home alone and heard her name called by her sister Jean, who was living in Sydney. She looked about the house in response to this, but found no one else there. She became worried for her sister, but as ways of communication at that time were difficult, it took many weeks for her to get in contact with her. Upon eventually talking to her sister, my grandmother found out that Jean had been very ill and was in hospital. My grandmother also found out that at the time she had heard her name called out was during the crisis of this illness, and that Jean had felt close to death. My Auntie Jean told me that she had dreamed that she was in a bright white hallway, and that in the middle of this was a turnstile. As she began to walk towards it, she felt that if she continued through the turnstile, that she would be dead, no longer able to return to the living. She decided that it was not her time, and walked back the way she had come. She lived 40 more years after this event. Another was when my great-great-grandfather, my grandmother's husband, who passed away before I was born, well, he was home alone and heard what sounded like many, many rocks being thrown on the roof of the house, and rushing out to find no sign of rocks or culprits. This happened a few other times while they were living there, but there was never a sign of anyone or anything. Another was when my Nana Kate had a neighbour over for morning tea, and the lady commented that my Nan and the family must have had a great night last night. My Nan, not knowing what she was talking about, asked her why. The lady went on to say that last night her and her husband had heard a great party being held up at the old horse yard, and that it sounded as though everyone was enjoying themselves until early in the morning. My Nan, looking confused, stated that there had been no party, and both of them were spooked. The last two from this property happened around the same time. It was the weekend, and the kids, my grandfather and great aunts and uncles and some of their friends, had went to town to the new cinema, and were not expected back for hours as it was a fair way to go. About an hour after they had left, my Nana Kate heard a car pull up out front, and the sound of kids getting out and talking and carrying on as kids do. She went out ready to ask why they were home so soon, but as before with the rocks, found no one and no car. Later when they returned, she told them, and they all found it strange. But a few times before they had left the property, and before this event, they would hear the sound of just the car pulling up, but it never being there. The car, they feel, may have been the spirit of one of their friends, a young man who tragically died in a car accident, and would park his car in the same spot they heard the phantom car stop when he visited. The last story happened the following weekend. The kids had been planning and building a huge bonfire. They had built it at the far end of the property, near the river and away from buildings for safety, and it had taken a long time to gather everything. It was the Friday, and they were planning to have it on the Sunday. That night, however, one of the family noticed something out of one of the windows. It was the bonfire, set alight. They all rushed to the area to douse it and see if they could find anyone or how it had been lit. But they found no one. The area was isolated, and you had to go by the house to get there, so they could not figure how it had happened. And the night had been cool, so naturally catching light didn't seem to fit either. Everyone was disappointed, but they were more so just confused at the oddness of the situation. They still had their bonfire, but with a much smaller fire than anticipated. Another story from my mother's side, told by my great aunt Shirley, is of the golden ceramic wall clock given to her by her son David. The clock never ran, but one day in the morning it started to tick, and then stopped. Later that day, she received a phone call, informing her that David had been killed in a car accident, at the same time that the clock had rang. It also ran a while after this, but stopped the day my Uncle Robert died. I was also told of another similar incident relating to the clock, and another extended family member when I was small. The clock has been an omen to my family ever since, and is watched carefully. This last story, before I get into my own experiences, comes from the Aboriginal side of my family, and was told to me by my grandmother, whom we called Nana Brown, about her experience with an Australian yowie. It is the only story from my family that I've come across involving a cryptid. When she was around 15 or 16 years old, she lived in a clearing inside a very remote valley with her family. I sadly do not remember where, but it was in New South Wales. The house was on the valley floor, which was about a 7-minute walk from the surrounding bushland. One day she was home alone, working in the kitchen, and noticed through the window a very tall and dark figure coming out of the tree line towards the house. The figure did not appear to be wearing clothes, and looked to be covered head to toe in thick brown fur or hair. The thing was moving very fast, with a broad gait, and within a few minutes of leaving the trees, was almost at the house. My grandmother started to have a very bad feeling, and knew that she needed to hide. The house being only very small, consisting of the kitchen and a bedroom with a dirt floor, It was not easy to find a hiding place, but she was able to fit into a small cupboard. Within seconds of hiding, she heard the door slam open and the thing enter the house. She could hear things being thrown around and rummaged through. Low sniffing and growls, then a final bang of the door, and everything was silent. She waited until she was sure that it had left before coming out of hiding. The kitchen was in ruin. Food crushed and scattered everywhere. The furniture upended and scratched. There was a terrible stench in the air, and there were big footprints in the dirt. For the rest of the day she was afraid that it would return, but it never did. But on other occasions, when close to or in the bush, she regularly felt that something was near, listening and watching. As I have said, I have always been interested in the strange and spooky, and believed in otherworldly happenings. But when you actually experience something, even if it is, in a way, a validation of your beliefs, it still makes you feel as though you were crazy. One experience that sticks with me to this day happened when I was 21. I will be 30 this year, 2019. It happened in my house, in a small rural town in New South Wales, of which my Nana Kate's property was located outside of. I now live a few hours away in a slightly bigger New South Wales town. It was 8 o'clock at night, and I had to get something from my room. My house has a very short hallway, and it only takes one step from the hallway door to my bedroom door. The hallway was very dark, being in the center of the house and not containing any windows. Instead of turning on the hallway light, I planned to turn on the bedroom light. I was in the process of that one step and reaching for the light switch when it happened. I had the sense of something jumping out at me from the darkness of the hallway. I stepped back with a scream, but nothing else happened. It was all over in a second. I was left with the image of an older man with a scruffy beard and wearing an akubra in my mind. The only way that I can explain how the image looked to me was that it looked like his outline in white, like a Kirlian photograph, also known as an aura photograph. I had the feeling he was a swagman and was there to protect me. A spiritual friend later told me that she believes that he is my guide and that he was scaring me to move me away from something that was there that wanted to cause me harm. I don't know what I saw that day, but I know what I felt, and I am still scared sometimes when I go to enter that hallway and other similar places. I should also tell you that my spiritual friend believes that I have the start of the sight, and that I am an empath. I have always been able to feel the energy of a place or a person, whether it or they are good or not. I also see shadows, mostly out of the corner of my eyes, but there have been 2 occasions when I have experienced them more, shall we say, close up. Both times happened around the witching hour, 3 o'clock to those who don't know the term, and I was working from sleep. The first time was in mid-2015. I was living in an Aboriginal student housing at the time, and my bed was in the far corner of my room, against the wall. I had my back to the room and was facing the wall when I woke suddenly, with a feeling that someone or something was standing behind me. I did not turn to look, but I had the image in my head of a short, about the height of a 7-year-old, hooded figure standing at the head of my bed. It was all in black. I could only distinguish the shape and height of it. This happened in a flash. With my eyes still closed, I spun and turned my bedside lamp on and opened my eyes. There was no one, nothing. I was scared but did not feel that the figure had meant me ill will. My second experience happened in mid-2016 in my current flat. Again, I had the same feeling and woke, yet this time I was facing the room and opened my eyes. This time the figure was at least 7 foot tall, still hooded, but I could see a face, a skeletal face. I screamed, a noise that I had never made before, and jumped for my light. Again, it was all over in a flash. Nothing was there. And again, I didn't feel ill will, but I was deeply scared and slept with the light on for the next few nights. I haven't had many more experiences here, except for a few shadows fleeting here and there, at the corner of my eyes. An experience I recently remembered to do with my being an empath. One time, when I was 15, my mother and I were looking for a new house to move into. We were being shown a house by the real estate agent, and when I stepped into the lounge room, I got a very bad feeling. I felt that there was a stain of darkness in the far corner of the room, and that something bad had happened there. We had decided against that house and ended up in the house previously mentioned. Later we were told that the couple who had lived in that house had been in a very bad relationship, and that he had beat her very badly in the lounge room. In October 2017, I was staying in Penrith, New South Wales, at my elderly great aunt Dee's, with my mum and my auntie Em, for my cousin's wedding. I had to sleep on a swag at the foot of the bed, and as my mum and auntie had the bed, the room was small, so the swag was a little bit in front of the door, making it hard to close or walk through. The door was at the end of a long hallway. One night after everyone was asleep, I was woken by the feeling that someone had walked up the hallway and was standing above my head. I opened my eyes with a small jolt, but there was no one. Again, I got the impression of an older lady wearing a long, white, old-fashioned nightgown. I know that it was not my great aunt, whose bedroom door was directly to the left of this door, because she had been wearing a knee-length pink nightgown. I'm not sure who it was, and although I was startled, I, as before, did not feel ill will. A couple of nights later, I decided to sleep in the lounge room, as it was much cooler than the spare room. The lounge room is at the other end of the long hallway from the room previously stated. The small kitchen is to the right of the lounge room when you walk in from the hallway. I was awoken again in the night, but this time it was to the sounds of someone walking around the kitchen. I saw no one, and soon the sounds died down, but I felt as though eyes were upon me, many eyes, and this time I did feel that I was not safe. I stayed in the lounge room, but it was an uncomfortable night. The following nights, I decided to stay in the spare room, with the door closed and the window open, and just dealt with the heat. I had no other experiences while I was there. I have other stories from my father, but I will have to speak to him again, as I can hardly remember them, and at this time, I will add them at another date, as this has gone on for far too long as it is. Thanks for listening, and I'll update you with other ones in the future. And to continue on with this, I'd love to narrate some of your stories, whether they be true or fiction. And I've set up a Reddit where you guys can submit them. If you don't feel that you could submit them using the Reddit, for whatever reason, whether you haven't got a profile or you just don't want to add it there, you can email it to lethalport1515@gmail.com, all lowercase. You can also find the links to this in the Reddit posts and will be added somewhere, most likely in the comments below. Well, not comments, but the description below. I've been told in the past that I'm good at listening and good at talking and reading and articulating, so I thought, why not give it a go? I like reading and I like reading out loud, even though sometimes I do get tongue-tied. um, but as I said, if you're interested in me doing any future narrations, just check out the links below and I'll work on things from there. I hope that you enjoyed this, and as I said, if anything else happens, I will definitely update you all. And I'll catch you guys later. Bye.